You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Locked On Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is longtime NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And the Locked On Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Hawks were in Gotham looking for their fourth road win in a row and another chance for Trae Young and company to take a bow. We'll talk about that, and we'll download on the Hawks heading to Sin City for the Cup semifinals, because it's not how you start, but how you finish. So let's talk about our takes on how the Hawks bounced back from an abysmal 0-for-8 start for the 108-100 win over the nemesis Knicks. And Tate, your take was they beat the Knicks at their own game.
Yes, they did. And listen, I mean, you see what it says there on the bullet point. The bullies got bullied. When you think about the New York Knicks and the way that they have kind of set their reputation and how they win their games, it's all about the physicality and all about the aggressive play. And again, I've been saying it for the last few weeks, and I think I said it a couple of times last year. People get the Southern hospitality twisted sometimes, to be honest with you. People think country cool and folks is just kind of lackadaisical and real easy going and very conservative. But the South got something to say, clearly. And listen, I mean, you know, when you look at this Hawks team, obviously they got off to a really rough start. Into the first quarter, they were shooting 30% from the field, 11% from three. And by the time the half rolled around, shooting 36% from the field, 18% from three, and we're still within good reach of the game. 54% from the free throw line, abysmal. 6 turnovers, I'm cool with, but only had 2 points in. I think that was only 2. Maybe not. That wasn't 2 points in the paint. I probably got a little bit excited because of how close they were within the margin.
Yeah.
When you flip your game the way that they did, making adjustments, and that's a credit to, you know, we could credit all the players for sure. We're going to do that throughout the duration of this particular segment. But making those adjustments, you got to credit the coaching staff on this one as well, to just kind of take note as to what New York not only was doing, but also knowing what New York is not capable of doing. And that was to slow down and stop the Atlanta Hawks, a team that ranks amongst the top 3 best in the NBA. So there's so many. I got a whole notebook full, whichever way you want to go, Tenitra, but congratulations to the Atlanta Hawks. And in some ways only, the Hawks, the Knicks, they were allowing the Hawks to kind of stay in this game. They were getting flustered. They were getting frustrated with where the Hawks had played so well. We're going to talk about it a little bit more later, but it was all about the pace and the space and some of the little things that they did.
Yeah, because midway through the third quarter, I said, wow, the Knicks are 1 point away, 1 shot away, 1 foul away from being in the bonus. The Hawks were about 6 shots away from being in the bonus. That goes back to one of the things that Quinn Snyder said he wanted to play. He wants to play bully ball, but he also wants to play it cleanly, meaning that you defend without fouling. That's something that we even talk about in College Park, right? And so looking at that, when you're defending and not fouling and you're getting back and the game is being played at your pace, guess who's going to end up doing the most fouling? The other team, your opponent. And that's exactly what happened tonight, because you look at the third quarter and sure, the Hawks outscored the Knicks 34-18. That is a big gap. And certainly we'll talk in a second about how that happened offensively, how they started to kind of pick themselves up. But really, it goes back to the fact that the Hawks got the Knicks in foul trouble, and then they just went to work on Karl Anthony Towns. He looked pretty solid on defense in that first half, but like you said, slowly but surely, they started to get to him. He unraveled, and before you know it, he fouled out. And in the meantime, you're looking at the Hawks getting to the free throw line. Now, they didn't do as well as we would have wanted them to, only 65%, and that's not a number that you and I like to talk about on this show. We like them to take advantage
No doubt.
of those free shots.
No
But
doubt.
when you can keep the Knicks off the free throw line, some of the things you do is, you sprint out, and I know you're going to talk about it in the second segment, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but you sprint out, you do it at your own pace, but then you play through the entire 24 seconds. That's another thing that's frustrating, because that means that's probably 1 or 2 or 3 fewer possessions for the Knicks in the stretch. And it did matter because, of course, the Hawks were up, I think, at one point by like 13. And this game, they only won it by 8. And part of the reason was because the Knicks kind of chipped away at it at the end. But I still feel like all of those extra possessions that the Hawks got, whether it was going right down to the wire to the 24-second shot, and then at 24-second shot clock, and then actually making it for one of those in the fourth quarter, which was delightful to see. But on the same token, saying, hey, we can win this game any way you want. You want fast break points? Well, I'll do you with that 20-10. Points in the paint, where you guys are supposed to be the big guys.
However you want it.
Yep, well, exactly. Well, I'll do you that way, 66-54. So those are some of the little things where it goes back to your point of playing bully ball and then doing a great job of making sure that they can't answer back. And to me, they really didn't, because when you dig down into the rebound numbers, I always say the Hawks won that battle 58-49. But a lot of times when a game is this close, I'm really interested in seeing how many second chance points you gave yourself and how many second chance points you gave them. That's another area where the Hawks cleaned up. They only allowed the Knicks 12 offensive rebounds. That means they said, hey, we're cleaning up the glass when you don't hit the shot, but we have 22 offensive rebounds, so we're cleaning up the glass when we don't hit a shot. I thought that was really, really good to see, because nothing makes DeShaun, Tate, and Tenitra Batiste and the Locked On Hawks postcast happier than to be talking about some defense to start the game. It was well-rounded. It was a well-rounded effort. But again, you got to go back to what you saw them do on defense to really kind of set the stage of what happened. And then you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of how they did the little things that DeShaun has in his crafty little notebook to tell you guys the other little nuances that we saw on defense, maybe a little on offense, that helped the Hawks to get this win.
I want to wake something up, Tenitra, because, sometimes, you hear so much about this New York mentality and this New York state of mind and all these other type of things. Sometimes I feel like those are some things that kind of stand in their way a little bit. I think that they entered this game thinking, just being too personal instead of it being just about the game. It started to put all this stuff surrounded about, Trae Young and him being in Madison Square Garden. And I get it. But number one, for someone who seems like they're definitely embracing that villain role and playing it so well, and having the record that he's having in Madison Square Garden ever since this, clearly this Hawks team has been able to put themselves in a position to compete. I think this is not the Hawks team or the Hawks franchise that you want to be, especially coming off of the winning streak that they had prior to the loss to Denver. You don't want to be putting them in an underdog role and counting them out, and then you're also keeping them in games and you're not able to score, and guys are getting frustrated, going to the bench, foul trouble. And Karl Anthony Towns is always, I'll just say striking me as one of those kind of guys. If you can get into his head and you can get him to shoot you out of games from the perimeter, taking him away from the rim, rebounding, taking him away from being able to protect the rim, because they don't have Mitchell and a couple other players. Achua just came back to assist him in those categories, and then pick up fouls on the other end. It's a win-win for a team that's just appears to be more methodical, and just really I can't think of the other word. It was a fancy one too, so I can't remember it. But they were that. They were more of whatever that was. And I can do that tonight because my team won. So congrats to the Hawks on being able to advance. And by the way, before we go to the break, I wore this one just for tonight, Tenitra.
Let's see. I love it. Survive in advance. They understood the assignment, DeShaun. They understood the assignment. Atlanta Hawks definitely survived and, dare I say, thrived in a very adverse environment. And we're going to talk later about where they advanced to. But next up, the second unit is where we got to go first. We'll discuss that in the and one. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So get this, we actually have 2 teams that are going to be in Vegas this weekend. You got the Hawks that are going to take on the Milwaukee Bucks in Cup action, and you also have the Falcons taking on the Raiders on Monday Night Football. So if you get a hunch in the middle of that Falcons-Raiders game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is also brought to you by Mint Mobile. So with big wireless providers, what you see is never quite what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were paying magically skyrockets. With Mint Mobile, you never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plan, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you. Now, all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So get this, there's a new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month. You can get it by going to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. Ditch overpriced wireless with Mint Mobile. So this is a conversation that we keep having, that we are so happy to keep having, because we know that there were so many moments last season where the Hawks were so depleted that there was nobody to turn to. They were pulling players from the G League. They had short rotations. There was just nothing that they could do as they awaited the return of a Bogdan Bogdanovic or a DeAndre Hunter, or even when Trey Young went out for quite a clip later on in the season. Well, that's not the case this season. We started off a little shaky, thinking that we may be going back into injury purgatory, but it didn't happen. And so now Quinn Snyder is able to utilize a really, really strong 9-man rotation that allows Trey Young to be able to take a break where maybe he wouldn't have been able to take a break at the beginning of this season, and darn sure not last season. And it allows for Quinn Snyder to kind of play around with different lineups. So the bench did it again tonight. Onyeka Okongwu, DeAndre Hunter, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Beat Krejci actually rounded out the bench tonight. 43 points, 17 boards, 2 steals. Is this bench showing themselves maybe to be one of the best in the league?
I would imagine so. I can't see it being anything other than that. If you start pairing them up to some of the others, now I know Oklahoma City Thunder, and there's going to be some others that are in that same conversation and breadth as well. But we're talking about over 40 points again.
Yeah.
And again and again and again and again and again. They continuously doing this, and all the eyeballs are on Trae. I think that's where it's perfect, where I think that Trae definitely has grown his game, where he's developed and his game has matured. It doesn't always have to be the big home run player, the big 3-pointer from the logo, which was pretty cool to see him do tonight a couple times.
Oh yeah.
But even more so about the way that he facilitates and distributes the basketball. There aren't guys over in the corners doing jumping jacks, screaming at the top of their lungs, "Hey, pass me the ball!" And they're bringing guys off the bench that are able, and it's giving everybody that much more comfort and just ability to play well within themselves and play their game, not feeling like they're being sped up or there's urgency or whatever, what have you, getting the ball in really bad positions. You got Onyeka Okongwu bringing some offense consistently. Hello. You've got DeAndre Hunter bringing some consistency on both sides of the ball. Hello. Coming off of the bench. And it's a good feeling to have. And again, they haven't even been utilizing again. And I keep saying it, some of the other guys that when there wasn't Bogey in the lineup and who's been doing well shooting from three and so forth.
Yeah.
Especially with his shot selection. And then you didn't have Hunter at one point in time.
Right.
Roddy was stepping up in some pretty big games for this team, playing some really big minutes. They still got him on the bench. Same thing with Nance. I have been seeing Vic coming off the bench, but I haven't been seeing a lot of Matthews either, who got a flamethrower on him as well from three. So, it shows a lot. Anytime you start talking about sports, you have guys that can come in, and it sounds cute to say next man up. But when you really mean next man up, and that next man up can really come in and there's no drop off in contribution and production, I think that says something. And that's one of the biggest reasons that not many people are going to talk about why they're winning the way that they are.
Right. And that's absolutely the thing, because when you look at the most points per game by a team off the bench this season, and that's averaging about 48.6. But when you put it together collectively, the Hawks are third in the league. So you were right. They're behind teams like the Memphis Grizzlies and the Golden State Warriors. They're ahead of actually teams that you might have thought had a better bench, and they may have a better bench, but they're not playing better than these Hawks. So the Hawks are actually, from a points perspective, but even when you start looking down the list of stats, right, you start looking at rebounds, and the Hawks are slowly creeping up into that top 10 as far as their bench unit and rebounds. And then you look at assists, which I know you want to talk about in a second. They're also creeping up into that top 10 as well. They're getting better. And you start looking down and you say, okay, what about steals? That too, they're starting to creep up. They're not in that top 10 yet, but they're making their way up. They're getting better by the game and by the week. And I think that's what makes me very impressed with what they've been doing so far, because the other piece is you don't know where it's going to come from. Any given night, the points can come from anybody. Now tonight, and most consistently the last couple of weeks, it has been DeAndre Hunter, but we've also seen that it can be anybody. When we look at the rebounds, yes, it's Onyeka Okongwu tonight, but that can also be anybody, because Dre has had nights where he's been threatening a double-double. And then Bogdan Bogdanovic, he's the one that you expect to lift them out of purgatory from three-point land. But in a very critical moment tonight, who got a shot block? Bogey. So those are the things where Quinn Snyder is starting to get these guys to see that there are so many different ways that you can contribute if your shot is not falling from three, or if you can't seem to get your shot on the inside going. Yeah, there's always something else you can do. And DeShaun, that's how they've won 7 of their last 8. But you also think there might be an area where this team is excelling that maybe nobody else is talking about, that's also led them to what looks to us like sustainable success.
Absolutely. I think it's the chemistry that they're developing and establishing amongst one another, learning and knowing how to play together. Again, remember, they're still getting a lot of guys that are playing some pretty big minutes in pretty big roles that haven't even played 27 games together yet. You know what I mean? So to see them doing it as early as they are, I think is obviously a compliment to them, but it's the pace. It's the space. They're one of the best up and down transition, fast running teams in the league. They find a way when we talk about distributing and facilitating the basketball, the way that they space the floor, find the open guys. Everybody's always been talking about Trae and his ability to score, but when you're able to watch him, if you're not in Atlanta, and that's how I know who's been watching the Hawks and who hasn't, you can see that this has just been one of those areas that he has always fine-tuned and kind of like trying to perfect his craft in. Cerebral is that word I was looking for, by the way. Tenitra was going to kill me if I didn't find it, but they're one of those teams, and it's led by one of the most cerebral players in this league with high IQs. You don't have to like him, you don't got to love him, you don't have to love his thinning hair and all the other jokes that you want to come with, right? But the reality is that you got to give credit where it's due. He finds a way to get guys. And not only that, you got, when he's not in the game, you have guys like Jalen Johnson who can run the break as a point forward, still able to find other guys. Bogey with his ability to be able to be a threat on the perimeter, good head fakes, swing. DeAndre Hunter, pump fake, sidestep, pump fake, swing. There's guys that just can kill you from so many different areas on the floor. They're all threats. When you have that many different threats on the floor and you have the kind of spacing that they have, the pace that they can run with, we saw a team in this exact same in-season tournament that went to the finals and played for the Emirates Cup, if I'm not mistaken, last year, the Indiana Pacers, who had the Hawks number, put up a gazillion points on them, all by running up and down the floor. Sometimes it's good to see that you can learn from teams that beat you a certain way and the success and what got them to this point. And to be honest, leading up to that in-season tournament, the Pacers was looking like easily one of the hottest and most talked about teams in the NBA. Who is that team right now? The Atlanta Hawks, doing it the exact same way.
Yeah, because they are amongst the top 3 teams in the league in transition. When you look at the advanced stats, only the Memphis Grizzlies and the Chicago Bulls are doing better. And I would say just better in number, because when you look at the standings, it doesn't really translate, especially for the Chicago Bulls. Exactly. So that's why you look at those advanced stats, and it's not just about, hey, they're number 3 in the league, but it's about, is it paying dividends for them? Is that transition ball then taking others off their game and off the block? And that's what they're doing. Like, they played their style of basketball and they played the Knicks style of basketball and found a way to win, meaning when they needed to bully on the inside, they did. When they needed to get transition buckets, they were able to do that as well. And because they're so versatile, that's also why you're seeing more success and why these Hawks are headed west for round 2 just 10 days later. We'll talk about that in Who Got Next. This episode of our Locked On Hawks postcast is brought to you by Game Time, which has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live much easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So think about this. Game Time Picks has a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. They have all-in pricing. It's a toggling feature that shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today and take advantage of the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, because what time is it? It's game time. So, DeShaun, we know that the Hawks are about to make a really, really fun trip. They're taking their talents to Vegas. So they're in, of course, the semifinal showdown as a part of the Cup Showcase. They're going to take the Milwaukee Bucks on for the second time in 10 days. We know that they took them down back on about 10 days. Well, it'll be 10 days because it was December 4th. So it'll be 10 days when they reset for their matchup this weekend. So what do you think are the keys to the game for the Hawks to be able to beat this Bucks team yet again and maybe find themselves in a Cup final? Whoa.
Y'all know, right? I love this matchup. And just only one of the reasons why is because I point it out every time, and I'm always going to keep pointing it out every time, as long as Onyeka Okongwu keeps doing what he does every time, which is play well. You knew where I was going, Tenitra. I'm going to have to watch you, because you be trying to live rent free sometimes.
Yeah, because he lives rent free in
Giannis's head.
All of their heads. Giannis is at the top of but I think they all kind of shake a little bit when Double O comes.
No, for sure. And I mean, listen, I mean, when you are a team like the Atlanta Hawks, and again, another situation where they're probably going to be underdog, going to catch people slipping and sleeping and whatever else in a city that never seems like it's sleeping, not New York. We heard that one. We beat them already. Both of these times, talking about in Las Vegas and the Milwaukee Bucks, is that you just don't want to be underdogs in this particular situation. I mean, they look like they, do pretty well against Damian Lillard. I think one of the main things you really have to focus on is making sure that you keep Bobby Portis kind of in a position to where he doesn't get into his crazy eyes mode, because when he gets to that point, it's like get
Right.
going, the car is starting and warming up, he's getting wild
Mhm.
with it, and sometimes that team feeds off of that type of energy. I think that that's just obviously just one of the things
Yeah.
for them and what they have to keep in check. And then, of course, Brook Lopez is playing pretty well for them as well. On the defensive side of the ball, obviously, he's a threat on the perimeter as well. But they've
Mhm.
got some really experienced pieces over there.
Yeah.
There was one other one. I can't think of the name right now, so I'll have to come back to it. But I think that's the main thing. Continue to play with this house money.
Yeah.
Continue to pay attention, but not too much attention to being that underdog. Keep filling that
Mhm.
role, keep filling that void. And I've been saying it. I don't know what they're doing. I have
Yeah.
no idea what they're eating for breakfast. Just keep whatever it is that you've been doing. Keep
Mhm.
doing the same thing over and over, because it's been working. And clearly, it almost doesn't matter who it's working against, because as
Yeah.
long I can deal with this team playing the way that they play and losing the way, however that may look like that they lose, as long as they stick to the game plan. There's going to be some
Yeah.
teams that are going to do better than they are and going to play better and whatever
Mhm.
else. But beating the Hawks and forcing, the Hawks forcing teams to play their game the way that
Yeah.
they have, I think that that will be beneficial for them.
Yeah, or show the resilience if you do have one of those games, and every team does, where you get blown out. Let me see what you do the next game. And
Mhm.
what we saw tonight with the Knicks was against the Knicks was very, very impressive. And I think two guys that you were probably talking about, one or both, would have been a Gary Trent Jr. and a Torian Prince, because those were the two who. Well, so Gary Trent Jr. was
That's
our
the
random
one.
role player.
That's
Yeah,
the
he was
one.
our technically he was our RRP
That's the
from
one.
that game back on December 4th, because he was the one that gave him just a little bit of trouble inside. He had when you look at the box score, 11 points, 3 rebounds, but he also had that in what 30. He played a lot of minutes. He played 31 minutes, but I think my point there is this: as long as you can keep that random role player in check just a little bit more,
Mhm.
or if you're not going to keep him in check at critical moments, keep the rest of these people in check. Because think about this: you've got, who do we just call out? Prince,
Mhm.
Antetokounmpo, and Lopez, and
Mhm.
said, hey, those are some bigs that most would fear. But when you look at the places where it matters most, when you're looking at the boards, Hawks out rebounded them 54-40.
Mhm.
Another place where you look at it for points in the paint, 64-34. So if they can have that type of formula that we're starting to see on a more consistent basis, then I absolutely think that that's the way that they should keep playing, because it's a formula that's working. And hey, love from Australia, we appreciate you for checking in, especially when we got good stuff to talk about, like what these Hawks are doing. And Robert, we know you always check in and appreciate you, and you are just like us. We're happy about the defense, and like Jamal said, glad we got the dub tonight. Absolutely, because when a team plays as well as the Hawks did, they reset, like you talked about before, DeShaun. They didn't just go into halftime and say, oh man, we played a somewhat abysmal first half. They came back in that third half smoking, and maybe it's still early, but maybe they are legit. And I like that Sean said he is impressed, didn't see this coming from the Hawks. And I would say the same. I think a
Yeah,
lot of people at the
absolutely.
beginning of the season didn't know what to think about these Hawks,
Same
because
here.
you didn't know what the departure of DeJounte Murray might mean for this team. You didn't know what you were going to see early from Zachary Rissache. We darn sure didn't know what we were going to get out of Dyson Daniels. Not
No,
like this. Not
no,
like this.
definitely not. Definitely not.
So yeah, I don't think that it is a far stretch to say that none of us saw this coming, at least at this time. And I agree with you, Sports Hammock. An incredible win, because they stayed the course and they reset themselves, especially in that third quarter. And no matter what the Knicks tried to do in the fourth quarter, DeShaun, inside, outside, it didn't matter. The Hawks always still found a way to come back. But we wouldn't be Locked On Hawks, the postcast, if we were petty before we get off this broadcast.
For
And
sure.
like DeShaun said, anytime Trey can get into Gotham
Mhm.
and he can take a bow at
Mhm.
Madison Square Garden
Mhm.
because he gave them yet another L, it's a beautiful thing. And Trey did it in so many different ways. I mean, he got him there was one point in, I think, the second quarter where he hit back-to-back threes, and you're like, okay, Trae, I see you. But then Trae saw everybody else on the court because, in the 36 minutes that he played, we definitely know he's always probably going to be in the plus, right? +6, but it's the 22 points and the 11 assists and the 5 rebounds. So to me, I love seeing him not just be petty and not just show you that he's playing some offense. Trae's playing defense on you?
There you
Okay,
go.
Knicks. Yeah. Just a little petty for you.
I want to say this real quick. I'm glad that you even brought any of this up. I'm so happy because I tweeted about it the other night. And, talking about, the guy done played defense and that. Okay, so how about this, Tenitra? I've heard it all, right? Coach killer, most disliked in the league, hard to play with, teammates despise playing alongside of him, stats are empty calories, doesn't make teammates better, they don't equate into wins, most overrated in the league, two-ball dominant, not a winning style of play, all of these different things about the guy that not only led this team to the Eastern Conference Finals, but now turning around and doing it, which I do think is a pretty big deal for the Atlanta Hawks to be competing for the Emirates Cup in season tournament. So as petty as I'm going to be, I just want people to know I don't forget. And while I am one of the people that is definitely one that don't mind criticizing Trae, I've been watching this dude since he was 16 years old. I say it over and over again. It's because I believe in the type of player that he is. Now, when it's on him and it's his fault, it absolutely is. And we're gonna also, me and Tenitra, because this is the way that we run the program. We're gonna call it out when it is. Tonight wasn't one of those nights.
No, it absolutely was not one of those nights. And for me, yeah, I've heard all of that same buzz as well, but it kind of harkened back to me. And hey, look, I'm not calling him Michael Jordan, so please don't at me. But what I'm saying is there were all of those pieces of commentary that we heard in the first 7 years of Jordan's career. First 5,
yes.
It was intense. Until somebody named Scottie Pippen, the original point forward, came and gave him a Robin, and then you could build around the Batman and Robin. Again, not at all equating these Hawks to those Bulls, but just saying that sometimes until you get that guy that for whatever reason is kind of your Robin, or sometimes he can be Batman and you're okay with that because you know that he has the ability to take over a game in such a way like Jalen does, maybe this is the formula that you didn't know you needed. Because we've tried it a few times. We tried it with the John Collins. That didn't work. We tried the DeJounte Murray experiment. That didn't seem to work either. But the Jalen Johnson experiment seems to be working pretty darn well. And we started seeing it last season. Unfortunately, he got injured. So we didn't get to really see it play out. Then Trae got injured. We didn't really get to see it play out. But now, at the beginning of a season, you've got 2 guys who can wreck a game, who can change a game, that are now healthy for the most part. I know Trae's still coming back from a little bit of his ankle or whatever that's still bothering him, but ultimately you've got them healthy. And then when you've got all the pieces around them just doing what they're supposed to do, not asking you to do anything extra. Zachary Risachet, just give us a little bit of bumping people here and there and give us a 3 here and there. We're good, man. And don't turn the ball over. And if we get a little bit from Clint Capella on the inside, all right, if you miss a damn bunny, you miss a bunny. But it just give us what we need on the inside with the rebounds and we're good. Dyson Daniels, whichever end you want to play at, or both ends on some nights, we're good. Those are the types of things that I think will make the conversation different for Trae, maybe now that we've not heard before.
I can definitely see some of that. For sure. And you've got to, you don't have to like it. You don't have to like him. You don't have to love it. You don't have to love it. But he's putting you in a position to where if you don't do nothing else, you got to respect it. And I think that's the biggest thing is he's earning his respect and he's keeping a mental note of all the things that were said. And he's not taking it overly personal. He's just letting it show in his game, the development and the growth and so forth. Let me ask you this, because I don't know how far we are up against it, but
we got to go.
I'm asking this before we go. Are we going to Vegas, Tenitra? What you want to do?
We wish, but we'll definitely give you guys a reaction for Vegas. Locked On Sports Atlanta is the #1 place to hang out after every game, including that game against the Bucks in Vegas. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, check out Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. Can't wait to download on it.